Flying Upstream. Today, we are going to have an exciting conversation with someone whose path took a little bit of a turn. Of course, he went from being an elite athlete to a fantasy author. How do you rewrite a life when your story already seems rewritten? Well, in this conversation, we're going to dive deep into his path, how faith, imagination, and grit intersected to bring him here. You'll hear about obstacles he overcame, pivotal moments that changed everything, and the surprising twists that led him to become the kind of author he is today. Izaic Yorks, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thanks for having me, Louisa. It's really exciting to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. Also, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You got it perfectly. Most
Yeah.
people do not. My name's usually a Key and Peele skit for people. So
Good, good. I'm excited. I want to start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? However much you want to share. I'd love to start there.
yeah, of course. So, oh my gosh. Um, really so like you said earlier, I was a professional athlete, and to get to the bottom of that starts way early, because I was a professional track and field athlete, for those who are curious, 1,500 meters. And anything athletic, if you asked my friends growing up, they would have said, no, there's no way that guy's going to do that. He thinks he's going to be a professional Pokemon player, which is not a thing. So, yeah, that is a shock in itself. But I come from a family that's broken, in that my parents divorced, went their separate ways. And my dad was a military guy, and a little bit strange. Usually it's the mom who gets the kids. And for whatever reason, it ended up being that me and my younger sister ended up going with my dad. And so that was already strange. And with that, going with a military dad, it was kind of a household that at times was a little bit devoid of that nice, warm, motherly touch. So there's many great things I got from that, including my dad's, discipline and hard work and that sort of things. But yeah, could have used some more hugs, I think, growing up. But, you know, my dad was a hard charging guy. And when they had their divorce, he was in the military. And that was about the time that they had my sister came into the world, and she had a bunch of disabilities. So much so to the point that it was a situation where all of her medications and everything it was an astronomical amount. And he could have worked multiple jobs and never been able to afford it. So he hit a crossroads where it was, you make too much money in the military to pay for what she needs, and you can't make enough. So it was try and make enough, which would have been, like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, or swallow your pride and basically go into poverty so that the state will pay for it. And so the military was great in that they gave him a honorable discharge early. And my dad basically gave up everything for us. So that's where my story begins, really, is seeing that heart of sacrifice that was modeled every day. And so that had an indelible effect on my soul. And combine that with the fact that my sister wasn't supposed to live past the age of 4. So my earliest memories are being, on an ambulance and going to hospitals. I vividly remember getting into the front seat with the ambulance people, because they didn't have a car seat for a kid my age, and having the lights in the dark as, my sister's having one of her mini seizures, and we don't know what's going to happen. And so those things have an effect on you, combined with that strange mishmash of the military dad in there. And somewhere along the way, I believe it was 2008, they were having the London Olympics. And that was a really big time for USA track and field, because it was the first time in like 50, 60 years that a distance runner won a medal. It was Galen Rupp in the 10K, and I believe he won the silver medal. And so, yes, I should have answered this. My sister lived past 4, and at this point she is 12. and she has all these different disabilities. We're watching this race together, and at this point, I can kind of understand her. I mean, I actually not kind of. I understand her. Other people can't. We have that brother sister rapport, but she can't speak. She's really can't. Um, but every once in a while, in a blue moon situation, a full sentence would come out, and she said, I wanna run like that one day." And you know, little old chubby me who has no business doing anything athletic was like, "Yeah, it sounds good. I'm gonna take you there one day. I'm gonna run there, and we're gonna go together." So I had no business saying that, but that became my mission, and so that was the start, really, or not the start, but that was the turning point where, okay, I took all of these things from the past, seeing my dad's sacrifice, getting the constant message of the military dad of like, you know, you don't have to be the most talented at something. You just have to have the most grit and the most determination and be willing to try. And I took that turning point and I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And so I tried out for the cross country team, which trying out for the cross country team means you make it because nobody gets cut from a cross country team. Um, and I was one of their worst runners ever. But through a long 4 years of getting up at 5 a.m., working out later in the day, I ended up becoming one of the best athletes in our state, getting to go to college, and then out of college was blessed to get to win a couple of medals in the NCAA, go to Olympic trials, and then sign a deal with Brooks and run professionally. So that's the start. That's a long way of saying that.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there are no other words, but literally, like, wow, because even just the why, right? Sort of like your sister speaking a full sentence in one of those rare moments. And, some would call it that intuition, that moment where you're like, I'm gonna do that, even though, as a kid, you probably couldn't even form how to do that, and what it would take to do that. It's almost sounds to me like your soul like spoke it for you, was like, yeah, yeah, we're gonna do that, we came here to do that. And that's just so beautiful. I love another thing that I'll point out is, the way that you refer to your father, and um not just, I love that you just pointed out like the polarity, right? Because here is, not only is it unusual, it is still very unusual in my experience for the father to be the one who gets the children, but also I feel almost can almost feel the respect that you, the way that you said it about your father. It's like understanding where that, what some of us what may look like from the outside as like that harsh upbringing of like that discipline, that grit, just keep going, just keep going. That we kind of have this idea of what military people are like. I just love the way that you pointed out that contrast and the beauty of it too, because that seems to play a big role in your story and in the path that you ended up walking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. There is a fantasy book series called The Realm of the Elderlings, and one of the characters, he's a stable master. He ends up raising one of the kids, and he had an injury that basically took him from being one of the best guards. And he has a great line that describes my dad, and it's in the context. The main character is a boy, and he gets into trouble, and this character who's like my dad is very harsh with him, um, but never harsh to the point of hurting him. But at one point, the boy kind of falsely calls that out and says, "Ah, why are you doing that?" It's like mean, sort of. And he goes, "Oh boy, I do that not to harm you, but to startle you into waking up." And that is a lot of how my dad was. Where it was like in the moment, it was very harsh at times, and some things, we're not perfect, right? There's no manual to being a parent, and
No.
so there's some things I'm like, you could have done that better. But that was the heart of it, right? Where it was like there's an uphill battle for you, um, and so everything he did was like pointing you in the right direction,
Yeah.
in the way that he knew how. So
Yeah. I love that. I love that a lot. So now let's talk about your athletic career briefly. So we're talking to you today. We know that you're an author today. So from all the beautiful experiences that it sounds like you had professionally as a professional athlete, what was the turning point into writing?
yeah, so I, as I alluded to earlier, I thought I would have nothing to do with sports. Um, and so great creativity, the arts, theater, music, that's always been what I've been interested in. So that's when I wasn't running or going to weights and stuff, that's what I was focusing with my friends, was that sort of thing. But I always knew that I wanted to write, like, because my parents were divorced and because there was that void of just that wholeness of family, that motherly figure. I would often go to books as a kid, uh, and I would find in those stories, I would find the different aspects of femininity and masculinity, and those characters would become my friends, and they, in some ways, helped raise me. So I actually recently heard from someone who helped, in my upbringing, that I had told them when I was younger, like, I'm going to be a writer one day, which was really, I didn't know I said that to them. So I was like, oh wow, that's amazing, right? So that's always been in the DNA. It's what I think I've been made for. It's what my soul burns for. And it's one of those things where, like, I can forget to eat and to go to the bathroom and to. It's that kind of a passion, right?
Yeah.
So as a professional athlete, I struggled to sleep, like take naps and stuff like that. Whereas like everyone else could, like we'd go work out, and by like work out, I mean like you would be on your back. Like it was grueling stuff. So my friends, my teammates, they would go nap for like 2-3 hours, and I was like, I kind of have insomnia. I can't really sleep. I'm a little restless. My legs tapping. So what do I do? Like I'm too tired to go do something, but I can't nap. I don't want to watch TV. I want to do something like with my time. And it ended up being that writing made sense. Like I could throw my feet up on the couch and I could type. I could disappear into this other world. And so that's where I started cutting my teeth. And I did that for a few years. And then around 2020, I was like, okay, I think I've done this enough that I want to try giving my hand at this, is like making this into a business. Like, can I run this as an indie author and as a business person, and maybe set up a career after? Which, oh man, I'm so glad that I ended up doing that with my time, because right around 2018, I, like, as a professional athlete, I was on top of the world. I was one of the best 1500-meter runners in the world. In 2018, the only person I lost to in the U.S. was the 2016 gold Olympic medalist. So things were, it was one of those things where like I could go for like every race was like less than 4 minutes worth of work, and I could walk away with thousands of dollars, right? Like life was made. Like there's no downhill. But there was. I started to slowly find that after that season in 2018, my weight just crept up a little bit, and it wasn't even like a pound. I noticed that I wasn't adapting to training. My sleep at night was a little bit off. And to anyone else, like if you're not, it sounds kind of crazy, because we were trained by not to worry about weight. Like that's not a thing. It's just more of like a metric. But there was no like eating disorders or anything like that. But when you compete at a level at that caliber, you start to know your body so intimately. Like it was to the point where if I would go in for my regular blood work just to see like, hey, do I have enough iron? How's this? I can almost accurately predict to like the number, like how much hemoglobin does this guy have? How much, like, and I would generally be pretty correct. So when I started noticing like, oh, 2018's done, 2019 season starting, and something's just slightly off, I mentioned that to my coach, and then it it got a little bit worse, but not enough that anyone but me would notice. It wasn't showing up in tests. And then, so it turns out that at the end of that year in 2019, I just missed going to the World Championships by less than 100th of a second. And the next year comes, the weight creeps up a little bit more. And so the pattern continues for a few more years, to the point where, like, eventually, come 2021, 2022, I'm like a completely unrecognizable athlete from just a few years ago, like 10 pounds heavier. I could have eaten as much as I wanted. I could have starved myself. It wouldn't have made a difference. I would have kept gaining weight. And so at that point, my coaches were like, hey, let's take this seriously. What's going on? And I was like, oh, thank God. We're finally like really throwing everything in the kitchen sink at this. And so we did all the testing, and it turned out that it was Epstein-Barr virus, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's just mono, you know. And most people get mono earlier in their life. I did, but stress can cause reoccurrences because mono never leaves. It just goes kind of dormant in your body, and it can come up. Unfortunately, by that point, I'd had enough negative experiences that I could recognize like some patterning in myself, and I was like, we gotta get out of here. I've been in Seattle. I've had a bunch of really bad experiences over the past few years. I think I need to transfer teams. And now I know what the problem is. Brooks is cutting my contract anyways. So I did that, transferred to a team out in North Carolina where I am now, and was going to run with Puma and their newly started track team out of Usain Bolt's contract, which was enough to pay for 10 people's individual salaries, which is crazy. So we did that. And my wife is a saint, because when I brought it up to her, she like deadpan was like, yeah, whatever, we're going to do it. Which is so sweet, especially when I add on the fact that we just had a baby. And so we had like, when we made that move, we had a 3-month-old infant, and we moved across the country to a place where we had no family. Imagine how happy our grandparents were that we're all in Seattle. We threw a dart on a map, ended up in a random town, got there, had the great new fresh start for a little bit, until I had a reoccurrence of the EBV, the Epstein-Barr virus. And this time, the coaches with Puma were a little bit more familiar with it. They got me in contact with the Olympic doctors, and we did a big audit over the years. And basically, it came back as, oh no, this isn't Epstein-Barr virus. Epstein-Barr virus, that is coming up as a result of the real problem, which is overtraining. You've been overtrained. Your adrenals are all messed up, which would explain the weight gain, the hormones, the not sleeping, all of that. And the only way to get better is to not train or race or exercise. And so I thought, okay, I didn't really pick up on the exercise part at first. I was like, I can cross train, that's fine. And they're like, no, you can only slow walk. So that basically crushed everything, because then Puma got word of that, and they're like, we're not going to pay you for that. We're going to take your contract off the table. So now we're in North Carolina, no family, no money, and that was the table of like the rise of the career, the fall, and the only thing that was really keeping me sane, besides, you know, my faith and my family, was having the writing and the characters to go back to, which has always been a through line in my life, you know. So
that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And that's what it is, right? It's like these moments of, I'm on top of the world, and I am at a place where I never thought I'd get to, especially for you, because, you know, you had a different career path panned out for yourself playing Pokemon professionally. So
yeah.
then you find yourself basically on top of the world at this craft that you've mastered essentially. And then comes the moment where it's like, okay, just kidding. What do we do from here? I think you were lucky enough. And I will say lucky, not because I think it's just luck. Obviously, you put a lot of work into it, as you described, that you spent hours every day. But lucky enough to have known from earlier on what you were passionate about and those characters and what they did for you. And so is that when you started writing the fantasy novels and the Christian novels that you write now?
Yeah, that's when I started getting very serious about it. Because in one sense, it was like there was a little bit of coping in it, right? Because like
Mm.
at the very least, I can escape into, like, I told you I could escape into it. I was escaping into my own worlds writing. Um, and then as I was doing that, I started to realize, oh, there's a cathartic element here to me, because I had, this is going back to my mom being gone. And I'd be interested to know what your audience has to say on this, if anyone's had this experience before. But I have anecdotally noticed that in divorced families where the mom is absent and people grow up with the father, there is a little bit of an emotional stunting amongst guys. This is just what I've seen from the few guys that I met, in that we don't tend to feel emotions to their fullest. So like, one of the things that my wife will always tell me that she really values is that she's like, you're like a rock, like almost nothing sways you. Like, I didn't
Mm.
shed a tear at our wedding, didn't nothing when our child was born. I mean, I was happy, but like nothing. Like, and so, but meanwhile, when I go to write, I realize like, oh, I'm writing these characters, and like I shift from here into that character. And so whatever high or sorrow they're feeling, I was feeling it completely. And like, I was like over here almost bawling, which I don't know, maybe that makes me a little bit of a narcissist, because I'm like, my writing's so good, I can like cry. But no, seriously, like it was cathartic in that I could like work through some emotions, in even though it wasn't directly related to what I was going through, it was still some of the same emotion types, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, um, the writing was a bit of a lifesaver. But the other part of that shift in why I started going more seriously with it was like, well, it's kind of like I've done one impossible career to what would be impossible for most people. So like, everyone's telling me this is kind of impossible. Like, why not? Like, just go do it, right? So, I mean, if there was like one thing that I could tell people, like, that I learned as a professional athlete, that I wish that everyone knew, is like how to scaffold. And that's like one of the most powerful skills that I picked up out of it. And it's not just amongst professional athletes. It's really, uh, you see it in professional athletes because they're like a top 1% of their field, but it's there in other fields, right? You'll see it amongst top 1% CEOs. You'll see it in special operators. But that ability to scaffold, which is simultaneously looking backwards at what has happened, bringing in that data, recognizing where you are and where you want to go, and doing it pretty quickly in real time. And so, like, I don't know if you're interested in that, but like, I was kind of thinking, like, what are the parts of that? And I kind of have that a little bit broken down, at least how I think of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I first of all, I want to say that no one has ever shared that, and I told you we're about 137 episodes in. So, yes, I am absolutely interested in hearing how you've broken that down, because that is so powerful, right? Like that ability that you just described is so powerful. So, if you want to go a little bit deeper into that, I'd love to hear it.
yeah. So, like, um, we talked about, I mean, me and my coach, like, we talked about scaffolding a lot. And it really does require, like, taking this step back, almost like, even if you have to step out of your body, so that way try and disattach the ego and recognize, like, I'm not as great as I think I am, or this isn't where I want to be, and that's okay. But really, it kind of breaks down into 4 parts in my mind, and those 4 parts are your awareness, your goals and desires, or the discernment to find those things. From those, like, that, those 2 things, recognize where you are, where you've been, and where you want to go. And once you have that direction of where you want to go, then comes in the third one, which is your discipline. Like, what are the things I'm going to put in place to get there? But the fourth, maybe someone might fight me on this. And for me, it has a little bit of a Christian context, but take a step, you can take it back and just take it to some spirituality or just trust. Because you could do all the right things in the world and things won't work out sometimes, right? Or you have people who do all the wrong things and it works out perfectly. So that last pillar, I think I call that faith. And for me, obviously, that's Christian faith. But for others, like, take a step back and just say, faith that miraculous things can happen in your life. Which kind of ties nicely into the fantasy stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love writing about, like, hey, there is ordinary magic in life. And you just have to open your eyes up and see those ordinary things and be willing to see them as miraculous. But I digress. And so those are kind of the four pillars. So awareness, your goal, desire, or discernment to get there. Once you have those two things of where you've been, where you know you're going, the discipline, your daily habits, and not creating things that are overly ambitious. Maybe your end goal is overly ambitious, but the things that are repeatable, not on a week-to-week basis, but a day-to-day basis. So that way, when you finally pop your head up and you look around and you say, oh, I've been doing that for months, that's usually the thing that gets you where you're going. And then that faith element, practically, what it works out to is something like along the lines of, I believe that good things can happen to me, basically not giving into the idea of despair, right? So those are kind of the elements that I was able to use when I was like scaffolding through my career. But then as the running inevitably I didn't want to became my identity, and then it all crashed, I was able to like say like, okay, well, what do I really want in life and out of it? And ultimately, like, I want to write and I want to have a great family and I want to leave something for them. And I want to help other people too. I believe that in fiction, sometimes the truth in fiction is truer than things in real life. Things that we don't quite have words that need a story. And I want to leave those things. And I realized like, okay, one chapter is closed, but it's given me everything to get started on this other thing. So
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I absolutely love what you said about magic, believing that there is magic in the ordinary things. There is so much if we can just open our eyes. And I recently got into anime because of my 9-year-old. So I can finally actually understand what you mean when you say that some of that fiction can, deliver those stories and those messages that maybe cannot be said in words, but do need to be said in story. Can you tell us about your latest work, the latest sci-fi that you're writing? What do we have to look forward to as far as your work goes?
oh man, I actually have a lot happening right now. I normally only have one book coming out a year. I have 4 coming out this November, which is exciting. But I'm in the fantasy sci-fi space. Books end up usually being pretty long, so these 4 combined are a little less than the word count for like one of those books. Anyways, I got one called The Silver Blade and the Magpie's Blood, and that's a fantasy book that highlights the virtue of sacrifice and at the same time talks about the beauty of family. And that's great. That's a great book for basically teens up to adults. Then I have a sci-fi book called The Red Line, and that's definitely, I mean, anyone can read it. My target reader was men who don't normally like to read, and it combines, it's looks at the virtue and the idea of like what is freedom versus true freedom. So it follows
Mm.
a man named Cal who is a track athlete many years in the future. So combining some of my own technical expertise, and the catch is has been regrown from aborted flesh and is a slave to a corporation. And so it's his race to try and get his freedom, because since he was reborn by a corporation, who really owns him, or is he even free? And then I think the other big one that I think a lot of people would love from your audience is this book that I'm really excited about called A Bard's Guide to Surviving a Dragon's Attack. And if you've ever read Beowulf or the Odyssey, that epic poetry, this is a year's worth of verse that tells a story of a young man who plays music, and is down on his luck, has given up, despairs. He's in an alley when a dragon attack destroys a town. And for the first time in his life, something compels him to pick up his lute and start walking after the dragon. And it's his journey, but it's written in a way where the story consecutively goes, but I think it's every other verse is written so that it gives you some like good life advice as well for your hero's journey. And I just got a good review back from that one, and they were like, "Oh, I wasn't gonna read it for like a few months, and then I was downloading it, and I couldn't stop. It's like a warm hug for the soul." So that one's pretty fun.
Oh, I love that last one because, I mean, all of them sound really exciting, but that one especially because it feels so in alignment with what I feel like is going on in the collective right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of people are finally waking up and realizing, like, I can do something. Like, I can step up and I can make a difference. And I love the life advice part. That is so beautiful. That is so, so beautiful. I mean, you're writing all of it. I mean, not only is it very clear to me that it comes from a place of purpose, but it all sounds also like it's very helpful in like a mental health sort of way even. So not just like entertainment for us. I'm a reader who love reading, getting lost in a story, but also
Mm-hmm.
like I'm going to take something really powerful away from it. So I personally, as a reader and as the co-host of this podcast and knowing who our audience is, and I do hope for all of you watching and listening that you do pick up this book. Um, just how powerful and how life-changing these books can be. And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the work that you do and the spreading of your message and the writing that you do.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that. Yeah, it. I think in some ways it does stem a little bit from my faith, but it also stems from the fact that like I didn't have all of the role models I wanted growing up, right? So like my mission for my books is I'm trying to write a, a book or a series that focuses on each different virtue of the cardinal and the theological virtues and the sub things that come out of it. So, and just hoping to do that in a beautiful way. So, like, this might be a hot take, but I absolutely cannot stand C.S. Lewis. I think he's just. I think his mastery is in saying things simply in a way that everyone understands, which is a brilliance to its own. But
Yes.
everything else feels like very thinly veiled allegory, and I'm like, oh, I know what you're saying here. So I
Yeah.
try to write more like a little bit more like Tolkien, in that you create a rich world in which the characters themselves are displaying or not displaying the things of beauty, right? So,
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's lovely. Thank you. And I have one last question for you as we get ready to wrap up. If you could say to anyone who may be an aspiring writer that may feel like their past disqualifies them, what wisdom or what would you say to them if they're like, I want to write, but I, who am I to write a book, to write some Christian sci-fi, to write fantasy? What would you say?
mm, well, if especially if someone was like, my past disqualifies me, I'd be like, you are the person who has to write something, because that means there was something very interesting about your past that has informed why you think that, and you have a take that no one else has. But also, like, I think that anyone who has a curiosity or feels they have a calling to it owes it to themselves to try, because there's just something incredibly self-empowering about doing something that you're kind of scared to do, or you didn't think that you could do. um, but usually if you have that feeling, it's there for a reason. And I would say that writing itself is but one of many ways to write truth. It's and you know, we all probably have overlapping experiences that have similarities, but nobody quite has. We all in our own way do have our own snowflake type experience. And so you have some take on, truth and that no one else has and that only you can express in a certain way. And so I think that you owe it to yourself to write that out. And even if that doesn't come out in that way, where like people are maybe getting that truth, you are fleshing that out for yourself more, which is probably even more powerful, because as much as we all like to be J.K. Rowling and have this massive effect on people, probably the biggest effect that we're going to have on people positively is the change we make in ourselves, and then the ripple effect that has in our community and the people we know.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and so true. There's somebody out there who needs to hear what you have to say in the way that you have to say it. And that may not be the masses, but that may be somebody whose life you may change in an instant. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Izaic.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. This has been great. So,
Of course.
and also before we jump off, if anyone's interested, I'm going to shoot Louisa over one of the ARC, which if you don't know, that means Advanced Reader Copy, links to the Bard's Guide for Surviving a Dragon's Attack. And if you feel so compelled or you're interested, that is a link where you can check out the book for free. And if you like it, leave a review, help me get that thing going. And yeah, it's been great.
Wonderful. We will have those in the YouTube description as well as the show notes for anyone listening. And thank you for being here. For everyone listening, if you are a rebel at heart, if you're looking for your people, join us at flyingupstreampodcast.com. We have saved you a seat. And of course, keep questioning, keep exploring.